Hello, everyone, and hello, Jane.
Hi, Corey.
So lovely to see you again. So, last time you and I caught up was 2 years ago. You had just released your third novel, which of course went on to be yet another bestseller, The Lost Man. And in between that time that we last chatted, you've had another novel come out in September, The Survivors, which is our discussion for today, which is here. And you've had a new baby. Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh, thanks very much. I mean, for all of us here, especially, Melbourne, it's been quite a strange year. So, but it's great to be here and talking to you. And thanks so much for everybody for tuning in.
We're so delighted that you're here today with us for the Melbourne Press Club. And the connection is, of course, not only to celebrate your extraordinary talent and this new wonderful novel, but also you're a journalist who made the transition into the fiction world, which I reckon if you ask most journalists deep down what would be your secret hobby or thing that you would love to do, they would love to say a best-selling novel. So how easy was it for you to make that transition from writing about fact into fiction and facing those sorts of deadlines of newspaper officers into deadlines which were self-imposed, I imagine?
Yeah, I mean, so being a journalist definitely helped me a lot. And I think, like you said, I think I've come across a lot of journalists myself over the years who have wanted to write a book, and I was, obviously one of them. And I think the first thing I would say is that running a book is quite hard work. So if, you're working full-time as a journalist and you're wondering why you can't then motivate yourself to kind of work on your novel in the evenings and things, I completely understand. Like, it's a big task. Like, it's a marathon effort, really. So don't be too hard on yourselves. But having said that, I think, as a journalist, it absolutely gives you a really great advantage over some other professions, because you've got some really I found for me, I've got some really sort of practical skills that I use all the time. So I mean, things like being really used to kind of just sitting at a desk in front of a computer, getting words on a page, working, as you said, to deadlines. That's a really, really important one. And I think when you're writing a book, you have to sort of impose those deadlines yourself. But again, like a lot of journalists I know, really work really, really well to deadlines. So that can work to your advantage. I think also being able to express yourself clearly is really important. And also the key one for me was also knowing that kind of structure of the story, of how to kind of find the most interesting bit, grab people straight away, and then keep sort of drip feeding that information to keep them engaged as long as possible. Because I'm sure many people will have been told, as I was told, when you're writing a newspaper article, assume that people won't get to the end because they'll get distracted, they'll click away, the old days used to turn the page. So you've got to try and keep them engaged as long as possible, but put the important, interesting stuff up front so you get them early. And that's something, I mean, I use that all the time, like every single book and every single chapter, I'm thinking about that aspect particularly. So, in terms of the pure sort of actual technical skills, I think being a journalist is a really, really good advantage. But then I'm not saying from there, you absolutely should just be able to, quickly write out a novel. It's not that easy. I mean, I still have to work at it really hard, and it is a big undertaking. But you definitely have a bit of a head start, I think.
You do a lot of what we see a lot of writers in their study. They have lots of stick-it notes and things like that. This character and these are the characteristics of it.
No, because I'm not a very visual person, so I write it down. I mean, I guess it's just how you process information, but I just do it on Word. Honestly, I just have plans, and I keep them quite well filed, so I kind of date them, so I'll know what my latest plan is, and I'll know where to find. If I've cut something out, I can work out where, I'll know where to find it if I want to reinstate it. And I will plan out the whole entire thing. And it's only when I really completely know, okay, this works, structurally, the characters are who they need to be, and I'll know chapter by chapter exactly what's going to happen, and then I start writing it. And honestly, if I've done that, and that will take me months and months, if I've done that, I could probably write the whole draft in 6 weeks. Because, I go in, I sit down, and I'll have the plan there, and I'll be okay. So today we're running chapter 4, and this is what happens in chapter 4. So I need 2,000 words where this
I'd
plays out.
say that's more than 1,000 words a day. So that's you're doing once you've nailed that, you're really at a cracking pace, aren't you?
Yeah, but a lot of it's because the hard work's been done in a lot of ways. And I mean, I think there's plenty. I mean, I would write more than 1,000 words a day as a journalist some days, like, you know, for features and stuff. I mean, I think people who are used to writing can write 1,000 words a day if you know what you're writing, and that's the key. If I don't know what I'm writing, you know, if I don't know what I'm writing, I would take a step back and I will sit down. I'll plan what am I stuck on. And I won't be stuck because I've done the plan. So I've already worked this out. You know, at some point you have to work out your novel. You have to work out what's going to happen. And, you know, there's no good saying it. And then he escapes from here and I'll work it out later. At some point you're going to have to work it out. So you may as well work it out before you've written 50,000 words to get to that point and realize that you can't work it out. Don't do that to yourself. Like, it's really hard to delete thousands of words, you know. And I just find, for me personally, like, if I sit down, I know what's going to happen in that chapter. It's actually just, then I can really focus on, like, you know, like writing it well. Like, what's the best way? I know what's going to happen. So what's the best way I can tell the reader that, like, the best language to use and the best kind of, you know, dialogue, and, you know, and there's always changes. I mean, it's never set in stone, because as you're writing, you do sort of come up with other ideas and things, and you do sort of learn a bit more about the story and the characters. And so I will go back and, you know, I will adjust the plan, and I will rewrite and things. But I don't do it on like I call it, like, writing live. Like, I don't do it live. Like, I'll step back and I'll plan it and I'll work out what I need to do, and then I'll go back into it, and and then for me, it's just so much easier just to write it then. It's always, I think, about finding what works for you. And look, I mean, you know, you read, you know, writing books, and everybody has a different opinion. And I sometimes read them now, and I read books by, you know, authors that I enjoy their books themselves, and I read their books about writing. And I think, you know, God, I don't even know where to start with this. Like, I couldn't follow these. I couldn't follow these instructions myself. And I know that I can write a book now. So I think, you know, it's, if you've got the background of writing experience, and you've got an idea, and, you know, the key things that I'm not sort of saying this to plug this, but it has some information. Like, I did a TEDx talk a couple of years ago specifically about, you know, practical things you can do to help you achieve your creative goals. And a lot of it is this stuff that, whatever you're writing, whatever your style is, it's like finding the time, it's being consistent, and it's kind of making all those things work for you, so you can give yourself the best possible chance of completing what you're working on. And I think a lot of it is that it's the real, like, practical stuff that can really make or break it, I think.
So I often wonder, as I'm reading a mystery or a crime thriller, and I have my Miss Marple hat on, and I'm trying to solve the mystery as it goes along. The same when I watch Vera on a Sunday night. I'm always, from the very beginning, quite tense about who's done it, thinking I'm oh so clever. But there must be, for you've got to hold back information and yet release it in a timely manner. And one of our attendees has actually asked a really good question here. What are the elements of a good chapter in your style of writing? Does there need to be a hook or a cliffhanger or a reveal at the end of each chapter to keep it moving along?
Yeah, look, yeah, it's a good question. And I think it really depends a bit on the chapter. So I would say the first thing is that each chapter has to, like, have a purpose. So stuff needs to happen in it. And by that I mean, you know, like, you kind of know yourself when you've read books and it feels a bit slow, and it's you know, it's not, you know, like, there's characters maybe having conversations or they're doing something, but nothing has really changed from the start of the chapter to the end of it. And I think maybe that's the key. Like, something needs to be different. You know, but yeah, someone needs to have discovered something, or, you know, had a thought, or, you know, driven out to find something. Someone needs to be doing something, and it doesn't necessarily need to be action. They don't actually need to be, you know, going hunting for clues. Maybe it can just be a revealing conversation, but it has to be something that, you know, you didn't know. You know, the reader needs to know something, I guess, at the end they didn't know at the start. And I think in terms of, you know, the sort of start and the end, I mean, that is, again, like, for me, like, trial and error a bit, and I will try different things, and it depends a bit on the pace of the chapter. If it's like a kind of maybe a slightly slower one where, you know, there's a bit of, like, emotional element, like, you know, sort of two members of a family kind of discussing something that they haven't discussed for a long time. It's a little bit slower and quieter. You might end on you'd end on a different note from if it's someone's sort of standing there having revealed themselves to have done something dreadful. I do think it's important to think about how the chapter ends and how it's going to segue into the next one, because you don't want to kind of annoy the readers by giving them a cliffhanger and then making them wait too long before you kind of return to that. I think you need to sort of acknowledge that they've turned a page for a reason.
Let's talk about the survivors now. And can I just say, I love the cover designs of your books. They marry in so well, yet they're all incredibly evocative of where they are set, which are all very different places. The Survivors, of course, is set in a coastal community in Tasmania. Evelyn Bay is the name you have given it. And there's often a return in your novels. There's a return back to the community of a chap called Kieran. 12 years ago, there was a terrible event that was the catalyst of which was a big storm. 3 people died as a result of that day. And Kieran has come back with his new partner and new baby. And it's that whole, the tensions are all just starting to gather. And then, of course, a dead body is found on the beach. Well, you had me at that page, that's for sure. There we were. Tell me a little bit about the Evelyn Bay Tasmanian experience. A couple of our participants today have commended you on the great settings that you create. How did you come about the Tasmanian coastline?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this was a really fun one. And I mean, I always try and I try and do like on-the-ground visits as part of the books to try and I guess capture those elements I was talking about earlier. Those things that because you can do you can do a lot of research from your desk, with like Google and phones and speaking to people. And I think especially if you've been a journalist, you have have that sort of inbuilt. I guess you know that you can pick up the phone and ask people questions. You kind of know how to sort of find people, I guess, who can ask questions. And you're sort of used to, I suppose, picking up the phone and asking. And I found even as a non-journalist, just doing it as an author, people are still very willing to speak to you about their experience and stuff if you just say you're writing a book. And that was even back, there's not even now when the books, people know the books, it was before as well. So that was again another advantage of having been a journalist, is being able to speak to people and find information. But I also do try and do I always do like an on the ground kind of research trip. So for the Lost Man, the last book, I went to Outback Queensland, which was really a very eye-opening amazing experience, really. And then for this one, I went to Tasmania because I knew I had the idea for this sort of coastal setting, and so Tasmania seemed like a really natural choice. I liked the idea that it was a small, just being a small island state. It's already got that sort of slight element of isolation about it. It had a lot of small community.
Have you in the past visited a place like Evelyn Bay in Tassie?
Yes, I've been to Tasmania a few times, just on on holidays and a little bit for book stuff in the past. But so I kind of had a bit of an idea about the kind of community I wanted to set and the landscape, so particularly that kind of rugged seascape. And so I'd done I sort of kind of I do like the plan and the draft and things from as much research as I can from the desk. And that helps me at that point. Then that's when I usually go on the in-depth research trip, because I know then where the gaps in my knowledge are and what kind of things specifically I'm looking for. So I have quite a targeted, idea, but also it's still early enough that I can still make significant changes depending on what I discover. Because I always find things that I didn't really know, I was looking for. So for this one, I went down to Tasmania in February, actually, because I wanted to go at the end of summer when the book is set. And sort of travelled around with my family. They all came actually as well this time, and so we all went around and went to a lot of different little communities. And I went scuba diving as well, because there's a scene in the book where the characters go diving on this wreck, which I thought was a really interesting element, that all these shipwrecks around Tasmania, and that was something, a good example of something that I feel like you need to be aware of your own limitations of your knowledge. And I know that I don't know nearly enough about scuba diving to be able to fake a chapter on it. So I arranged to kind of go and get that first-hand experience of what it was like.
And just a final question. You mentioned about making changes after sending the first draft and so on. Is there anything that you, in hindsight, would have liked to have changed in the final work, or had a chance to rejig a bit? Or are you pretty
no, good question. No, so by the time it's finished, in all 4 cases, I've always been happy with it, and I've always felt like I've done everything I can do on this, and it's how I want it to be, and it's the best version of the story that I can tell. Having said that, sometimes, like, I think the more you write, the better you get at it, ideally, I think, and you become a bit more practiced, I suppose. And as I sometimes, I look back on, I mean, to be honest, The Dry, which I can have no complaints about. I mean, that book has done wonders for me. But just from a purely technical point of view, I look back on that and I think maybe there's like some slight things I might do differently if I were to write that book again. But then, I mean, what's the point of that? Because, I mean, that book is, how can I argue with that book in any sense? I can't. So, but I think you just, I suppose that's like the ideal is that you do become better and more aware of your own writing style. And so you will, in time, see things you maybe could do better. But no, at the time, I've always sort of been able to, I always aim to get to a point where I feel like this is the best I can do. And this is, I'm happy with what it is. And I do feel that for all 4 of them.